Welcome back to another episode of Questions with Crocker with me, Dr. Crocker, and my husband, Shane.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good.
We have not recorded one of these for a little bit because life has been crazy busy. So I'm excited to get back in here and get a couple done in a row. Our kids are being taken care of by my mom. So we're like, it's go time. It's work time.
I had other things on my mind, but we'll do a podcast.
I definitely pulled you away from something you enjoy. What were you doing before we came in here?
I was watching golf.
Golf. Yes. I feel like that happens every weekend.
Yes.
Is this one like a special tournament that I took you away from and you're going to be angry at me forever, or?
Not angry forever. No.
Okay, good.
But it was the final tournament of the year. Tournament champion.
Oh, the final tournament. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to make that up to you later. I'm really sorry. I wanted to get this in earlier in the night. We usually record at like 10:30 at night, which I feel like I really come alive at night. It's a little bit more of a struggle for you, but I'm running on a couple of hours of sleep because I worked in the ER last night. So I am a little tired. My eyes are really bothering me. But I think that this is going to be a good episode, and I'm excited to talk about externships and internships. Get a ton of questions about that.
I didn't do an externship or an internship.
We're going to get all into it. Don't you worry. It's definitely going to happen. But we had a great question come in, and I think we have a lot of good information about it for, both vet students that are really looking into externships and internships, but also practices, because I think it's a very underrated hiring tool. And I think it's a great way to get your practice out there in an industry that is extremely short-staffed. So
Agreed.
I worked in the ER last night, and we had a couple crazy cases come in. Do you listen to a lot of my, stories and things like that? Do you think what do you think would have been a common thing that came in last night? Let's see how good
vomiting.
You listened to me. Yes, something vomiting. We actually had a ton of things vomiting, but one of the ones that was the craziest is we actually had an older pit bull. She was not a fan of being in there, so it was a little difficult to do full workup on her initially, but they reported that she was vomiting blood. So I will tell you, when owners say their pet is vomiting blood, sometimes that's like, a little blood spot, but they showed us a picture, and it looked like an exorcist situation. She was vomiting blood. So she got x-rays done, and she had a piece of metal in her stomach, like a very small piece. And I actually came in at night and took over the case for somebody else, and they said that she needed surgery. And so we decided that we were going to try to scope out that piece of metal instead of like going in and opening her all the way up, because we thought it might still be in the stomach. Well, I went in with the scope, and basically that means I run it down her mouth, down into the stomach, and it was just full of blood. Like, I'd never seen a stomach just completely full of blood and blood clots. It was kind of terrifying how horrible it looked. And I could not see anything like in it because there was so much in there. And we tried to suction it out, but you just couldn't because of the blood clots. So ended up taking her to surgery. And the interesting thing was that piece of metal wasn't in her stomach anymore. It had actually migrated out and pushed out through the wall and was just sitting when I opened her up right there on the very top. Is this terrifying you? I'm sorry.
I have no idea what I'm visualizing. So I think I'm fine.
I would say that when your veterinarian says like, oh my goodness, about something, that's not usually a good sign, because it means that it's something that they haven't seen it be that bad before, or they just haven't seen it before. And this was I've never seen a stomach be this angry and be this bad. And so luckily found the piece of metal really easily. And then I did still open up the stomach to make sure there wasn't like a tumor or something else. And it just was really angry. And we think that she just has had a lot of trauma from that piece of metal being in there so long and then working its way out. So she recovered really well. She actually, tried to go after us again once she was fully awake, which I take as a good sign because she didn't want us to mess with her. So, and I've been checking on her and she's doing well, but it was a very interesting case. We also had like parvos hit by cars, things like that. But
so did it eat a piece of metal?
So we don't know. They actually thought at first it was a sewing needle, but it looked more like a bristle off a brush. And sometimes they'll eat brushes that you clean grills with. That's a really common thing that we'll see that dogs ingest, but those are usually a little shorter. And this one was like this long. So we don't know where she got it from, but it looked like a sewing needle, but it just didn't have an edge on it. Our dog is
freaking out,
disrupting the camera. but it didn't have the hole on it like you would expect with a sewing needle. So the owners honestly have no clue where they got it from. And the owner was the nicest person, was a veteran, had just come back from, being on tour, and then had all these things going on with her
So
dog.
Back to the open concept, did this dog go to a room?
So it did go to a room, and luckily the owner had trained it really well with like a basket muzzle, which was great, and she was able to help us. But basically we just had to like sedate and just do everything at once to kind of reduce stress on her, but make sure we could be thorough. And that's the hardest thing with like aggressive dogs in an emergency situation. But she was dog reactive and people reactive, so we definitely put her in a room, which we do have in the open concept. And the owners were really thankful that we worked with them, because apparently she's been trying for years to be able to get this dog to a veterinarian, and has tried different oral medications, and none of them worked well enough that the dog could get like a great workup. And so she's just thankful that we tried, and we didn't just say, no, we can't do it because your dog doesn't want us to do anything to it. Like, it's an emergency. We have to figure it out. And so chemical sedation was the answer. And last I checked, knock on wood, she was doing really well. So hopefully she'll go home today and continue to do well, but we will see.
Nice.
It was a very interesting case. So that is why I look tired. Sorry, that was a really long story, but that's why I look tired. Got a couple hours of sleep, and then we watched our kid play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was dominated by that girls' team.
He was dominated by the girls' team. Yes. The girls' team was very good. I thought you were saying he dominated. I was like, well.
No, I like your face.
He played okay, but dominating.
He scored a goal.
He did, yes.
He scored a goal. So we were really excited about that. So, but yes, it's the
I'm not sure we could have beat the girls' team ourselves, to be honest with you.
They were really good. And we're the other like little top team for indoors. So it's been like a back and forth. So it'll be interesting. I think we'll end up in the championship together. We'll see what happens. But man, those little girls, they were on fire. It was awesome. Ranger is playing in the curtain, so it's very distracting. Sorry. Okay, so let's get to our question. I wanted to answer this, and it's from @Caitlin Rossi, and she says, when do you start internships, and how do you find the best ones? And I think that she's talking about actually externships and internships, because internships are something you start right after vet school, and we can get a little into like what each one is. What is your understanding of the difference between an externship and an internship for vet students?
Externship you do while you're in school to get some more experience, hands-on type experience. Internship, you don't have to necessarily do an internship.
Correct. Good job.
Unless you want to specialize or you just feel like you need additional training before you're out there on your own.
True. That was great. A+.
Listen, I learn.
I know. You listen so well. I'm so proud of you. So that's 100% true. Now, the externships can be done really at any point in time. You could say you're going to do an externship, but usually when you get in your clinical year, which is like end of third year, fourth year, you actually go on externships where you get graded. So you go into a hospital and you spend time with them, usually at least 2 weeks, and you get a grade for that.
Vet schools require externships and the same amount of externships?
They do not. And it's actually really interesting because some school models have a model where they do a lot of case-based learning, and they don't actually have their own hospitals in the vet school. And
that's strange to me.
It is strange. And it's...
they did human medicine too?
I don't know. Probably, because if you think about it, in human medicine, they're going to have a lot of very large hospitals in general, and there's more options for them. So I think it's less common in veterinary medicine because not all like vet clinics and hospitals are set up to really host and teach and train the way a student needs to, like very intentionally. So I think that it is something that is moving towards a little bit more because it's cheaper to have a vet school that doesn't have a full running hospital. You have less, professors that you have to teach, and a lot of your students are doing their training like outside of the school. Now that means you have to make sure they're going to good places and they're teaching them the right thing. So there's pluses and minuses, but I think for me, like a hands-on learner, I actually would have done well at a school like that, where I would go out in clinics and I would actually learn by doing and seeing cases versus being like at the hospital with the specialist all the time. But it's really, I think, personality dependent a little bit. So yes, externships are going to be done during school. And for me, it was a way to like date different hospitals and decide where I might want to go do an internship. So before we get into the internship part of it, I do want to make a note. I think that internships are great if, like you said, you want to specialize, if you know, I want to be a veterinary cardiologist, that is all I ever want to do in life, I'm going to go that route, you have to do an internship. Like there's really not many other options for you to get to that. But if you're doing it just for experience, I do think that's interesting. And the feedback I get from vet students right now is they're being told you really should do internships. You need the hands-on, you need the mentorship. And I just don't know that I agree with that.
Told that by
the professors that they're working with and the specialists that they're working with. So I think that partially because of COVID, students are saying like, I didn't get enough surgery, I didn't get enough hands-on because they did a lot of online learning. And so they feel like they have to do it. But let's be honest, an internship, you're getting paid a third of what you get paid normally. You're working really long hours a lot of times. And hopefully you are getting the mentorship and training you were promised, but not all of them are great. Not all of them are like that. So I do think that if you are going into it and you really want to do an internship, you need to know why. Now, I did an internship and I'm really happy I did one. And not everyone can say that, but I did it because I knew once I got done with that, I was going to be in a truck by myself as an equine vet and I would have no one to lean on. So I needed a place where I could go and get a ton of hands-on and learn as much as possible in a year, which I ended up doing. Where did we go?
California.
Did you have fun?
Mm-hmm.
You golfed a lot.
I did.
And we were like 10 minutes from the beach and we never went there.
It was a great place to be, though.
It was a great place to be. Internship stories will be far in the future, but I think I want to focus a little bit more on externships. So I think part of finding the right one is really networking, right? So you're going to look for locations you want to go work at, or if you're like, I really want to do A, B, or C. So I wanted to work on horses. I knew I wanted a lot of ambulatory experience. I'm going to ask around about externships where I can go and I will get a lot of ambulatory experience. And for the most part, I had great externships and I got really good experience. However, that was not always the case. So I had an experience where I went to a very prominent hospital, and you work hard during your externship. Like you're really it used to be you're required to get up at night, help with treatments, also be available when they ask you to go do emergencies and do other things. And I was studying for the NABLE, which is like the national board exam, which is really stressful. And so I would try to like study every night a little bit. And there was one night I'd already been on like 3 colic calls. And let's be honest, I grew up with horses. I'd been around a lot of emergencies. I was pretty familiar with them. And so they asked me like, do you want to go see this colic? And honestly, I was just exhausted and I really was stressed about the NABLE. So I said, no, I don't want to go see the colic. I really can't. I really need to finish this prep. I really need to get some sleep. And I had one of them tell me the next day, they're like, you'll never get this internship because you said no to that one experience. And it was really defeating for me in that moment that I had worked so hard 99% of the time that I was there. And I set a boundary and said no once. And they were like, that's it. You're out. How do you feel about that?
I think it's more of a blessing than anything else.
Probably.
Because if you would have accepted that internship, that probably wasn't a good fit for you.
That's probably true. It's actually a really good way to look at it because I definitely had a feeling for a long time like I failed because it was a place I was really interested in going to. But you're right, that culture wouldn't have fit me and my personality and my goals. And that is a great...
But I'd also say that was short-sighted of them because I think you'd work circles around anybody else they had in there doing an internship.
I mean,
personally,
I said yes to everything else and I know I'm a worker. So it was really frustrating to be judged on that one thing. But I guess when it's a competitive, position at some of these really well-known places, they can do that. They can look for any small thing to cut you. And so that is a difficult part of it. On an externship, you were kind of required to be there, work really hard, and be engaged the whole time. And it doesn't matter what else is going on in your life or physically, if you're exhausted or mentally, if you are just like struggling, like they really are comparing you to everyone else.
I think that's stupid. I mean,
I love the honesty. No, I mean, I agree. And a lot has changed with it. Like a lot of things are changing. This was how many years ago did I graduate? 2009. So 14 years ago. Some things have changed and I think some of the experiences are better than they used to be. I've actually talked to externs that have been at some of the large hospitals and they're not required to be there 24/7 and they get a day off and they get to have a little bit more leniency and they want them to explore where they are and, get to know the team a little bit better. So boundaries are being set, but back then it was you show up, you work your butt off, and you prove yourself every second. And if you don't have an opportunity. And I ended up going somewhere that I loved and it worked out. But that definitely was the feeling that we had. So I do think, let's talk about some tips for being a good extern. So you're networking, you're asking people about places that you want to go, you're interested in, let's say, mixed animal, and you want to go to a certain area in Texas. You can actually look online and you can look for practices that, are on social media and are promoting themselves. You can ask your professors, you can ask people like me, where you should go and where you would have a good experience. I think all of that is helpful. But when you actually go on your externship, there's a couple important things that I think you can do to stand out. Would you have any tips for somebody who's like looking to go to a place long term? Anything that you think would help somebody stand out?
I think standing out's important, but I think being yourself is probably more important.
Look at you. You're being all like wise and Buddhist today.
Again,
what do you mean by that? Explain that a little bit more.
You don't want to be fake for a week period where you set a certain standard where people think this is who you are. And then you end up going back there for an internship and it's not who you are. And they have a bad, experience. And then it turns out that you have a bad experience because of that. So I would be who you are. If you're loud and funny, be loud and funny. If you're shy and quiet, be shy and quiet. But soak up knowledge. I mean, be present. Don't be on your phone the whole time or checked out or whatever it is. You're not just checking a box. I mean, you're there to work and learn.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be yourself.
I think that is great advice. And I actually didn't have that on my list. One of the first things I had also was to be engaged. It is hard to teach while you're also working and to train as a mentor. So when you have an extern who is really there and is in it and is asking you questions and wants to know more about the case and will go look things up and come talk to you about it, it makes it more fun and it makes it...
You can also be shy and still be engaged.
100%.
Like, I want to make sure people understand that. And it's okay to be transparent with that, right? If you show up in externship, tell them, hey, I'm a little quiet, I'm a little shy, but I'm going to be engaged and, I'm going to do my best to talk as much as I can, but understand that I am kind of a shy person. It's okay to say that. I
think that's great. The other thing I will do is I will ask people like how they want feedback and how comfortable they are with questions and like direct questions. Because I have found some people feel like me asking them cases where I just want them to learn, it's a lot. And so I try to kind of gauge that right off the bat. But I have some students who say to me, I really want to work on this. I want to work on my medical knowledge and this part of it. And I really want to see these cases. And when they're coming in and like setting goals for their externship, that is huge. And it makes them more memorable because we are really working on something together and I'm invested in them and I really want them to succeed. And I think that's important. So obviously being on time, being engaged, being yourself is really important. I think afterwards, because we see so many people and maybe students don't think about this or don't want to think about this, it's really great to reconnect afterwards, especially if you're getting a grade or you're going to want a recommendation. I write a lot of recommendations. I have to give feedback on every single extern I work with at Veg, and that's a lot to do, right? And so if someone sends me, like we had someone recently sent me a really nice thank you note, sent me pictures we had taken together, reminded me of things we had done together that they really enjoyed, like thank you for letting me suture that laceration. And those things then were in my head when I was going to do the review and I was going to write about them. And so following up and just reconnecting is really, really important after your externship. So really straightforward things that you can do.
And again, remember, this is just a week-long deal, right?
Right.
The veterinary industry is a small industry. You're going to see this person at conferences. You're going to stay connected and ask questions in the future, et cetera. So you need to be real. You need to be authentic. You need to be gracious at times. I mean, we host a lot of vet students, and you can kind of tell from the ones we host who's going to really make it and be, do really well, and those that are going to struggle a little bit. Yes.
And I do think when you especially have students that are like superstar students, you're going to have everyone wanting them to come there. So on the flip side, as a hospital and as a practice, you actually want to give them a great externship experience. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. What are some of the things that you think are helpful if you're having externs come in your practice? What can you do to make their experience better?
I think you want to make sure that they're engaged out of the gate, that you're inclusive. And everybody on the team is on board with all the activities that you're going to be doing. The last thing you want is somebody to show up and it's unorganized and they can't really get in the mix because everybody's, keeping them at bay. So you want to make sure that if you have a program, that it's a real program, that it's structured, that you allow people to participate, that everybody inside the clinic is hopeful and there to participate, and also be gracious and be a good host. I mean, like you said, you're kind of interviewing these people for future, job potentials as well. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that with how competitive it is right now to hire, thinking about every extern as a potential hire or them maybe knowing somebody who could come work with you is really, really important. And not that you want to be fake as a clinic, but hopefully you have a culture already of being inclusive and mentoring and enjoying teaching and learning. And so you just want that to carry over to the student. So I, have a printout for externships. Veg sends them a packet of what to expect. So set expectations right off the bat, what to wear, what to bring, what the hours are. All that should be really straightforward. But sitting down and saying, like, we're so glad you're here. Let me make sure you meet everybody. We give you a tour. We give you a name tag so people know who you are. They know why you're here. And then setting goals, I think, is great for the experience. And either they can say, these are what I want to work on, or you can say, what's something we really need to help you with? Do you want to get more in surgery? Do you want to go in the rooms with the doctors? Do you want to work on your just overall skill set? Let's put you with some of our best technicians and get you placing catheters and intubating. Having that conversation helps everyone kind of be on the same page. And then I will often try to follow up with them, 2-3 days in, just to see like how they're doing and if they want to reset any of that or they feel like things are going according to plan. So those things are important. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about is housing. It's really expensive for these students to travel and to stay somewhere. And so being able to provide housing is really valuable. And we are lucky because we, built our house and we have a guest room, and we joke that it's the vet student guest room because I really wanted a place that we could have.
I don't know if that's really a joke though. I mean,
it's not.
We built a house. I mean, there was full intention that we would house a lot of vet students. So.
And we have, and it's been, I think, a great experience. One, our kids get to see these, young people that honestly they consider much cooler than mom and dad, who really are kind to them. We have them sometimes like they come to soccer games and softball games and they have family dinner with us. And, we just get to really spend time with them, get to know them and feed into them. And I think you and I really enjoy that, but it's been great. Like Izzy is a pen pal with some of them now and she writes to them. And so seeing that and just creating that community is really, really important. So I think that those are really great intentional things you can do to set your externs up for success. Set goals, make sure you're clear, make sure your whole team supports them and welcomes them, and really teach and train to what they want to work on and don't just like throw things at them.
I think as a practice too, you made the point about financial impact. I think people need to realize that, right? You got vet students that are accumulating so much debt already.
Yes.
This is just an addition to they need the experience. They need to get out there and see what other practices are doing, but it is very expensive. So keep that in mind. So when they do show up, treat them to a meal. I mean, it's not going to break the bank for the clinic to buy them lunch one day and just sit down and have a real conversation about, how they're doing, et cetera. So I think you got to keep that in mind that this is not cheap for them to do at all.
No, and it's relationship building. And honestly, we've all been in vet school and we've all been the people that are eating ramen and, can only afford like ramen and beer, and that's it. So I think that taking them out to dinner or cooking for them, like we've grilled, on the back porch a couple of times, and it's been really great. And you really get to know people a lot better too. And so those are things that I think can help you be a practice that people want to come to and want to extern at and ultimately want to work at, which as a practice owner is a goal of mine. I want to teach and train. I want to mentor. I want to help the next generation, but I also want to think about the future. And as I'm looking to add to a team, I want to meet as many amazing young veterinarians as I possibly can. And externships are a great way to do that. Now, on the flip side of that is people can have a really bad experience in an externship. And because our industry is so small, and especially with like social media now, I think that can be really bad for you as a practice. So I had a student reach out to me recently, and it's one that I know pretty well, and she is very popular on social media. And she's had to navigate that with her school and, try to be careful about how she talks about certain things. And I certainly know if social media had been as popular, when I was in vet school as it is now, I definitely would have shared my experiences and talked about it because people want to know what it's like. And so she, is on there, but I wouldn't consider her someone who is inflammatory or negative or anything like that. But she went to a practice to do an externship. It was a practice she was loving the experience at. She actually was very excited about it, and she's looking to do an internship, and it was on the list of like possible internships. And mid-externship, she called me really, really upset. And she said one of the older technicians pulled her aside and said, I know you're on social media, and if you say anything negative about this practice, like I will destroy you. And you just need to know that I'm watching and that I know. And I, number one, was like pissed, right? Like right off the bat. Little protective, like mama bear feeling of one, this is a practice that I normally would have told people to go extern or intern at. And to me, it just speaks to the culture if a senior technician basically will threaten a student over their social media. And she hadn't posted anything negative. She hadn't done anything. She'd followed their policy they'd laid out about social media. She was actually having a great experience. Well, that one thing obviously made it where she never wants to go there. She would never consider an internship there. So they missed out on an awesome student because of a toxic employee. But to me, it spoke to some underlying issues at that practice in general. And if you don't think that stories like that are going to make it around in our industry or make it to students, you're unrealistic. And so making sure that your house is clean and is what you say it is before people visit is really important. And hospitals need to know that. On the flip side, another practice on social media that's really active, that's great, that knew she was in town locally, reached out to her and said, hey, why don't you come? Let's make some TikToks together. Let's hang out. We want you to see our practice and like meet everyone. She now has rescheduled her whole schedule so she can come back and do an externship with them specifically because they recognize that she is someone who's really excited and passionate about the industry and that she is a valuable voice in the industry. So if you look at those two practices and the way they chose to handle that situation, it's shocking to me that one would think that threatening her was the way to go. Yeah. And so obviously if people visit us, I'm going to want them to talk about their experience. Veg is the same way. Students come, we take pictures, we celebrate them, doing different things, unblocking cats, being in surgery with us. We want them to talk about things because we have nothing to hide. We are transparent about who we are and what our culture is. And I think that that is important for them to see. So obviously I get a little fired up about things like that. But stuff like that just has to stop in our industry. The bullying and the toxic behavior is everywhere. And until we start calling those things out more and we start speaking them into life and letting people know about them, it's going to continue. So I'm not going to put anybody on blast on social media or on here, but I think people need to know that we're going to find out about things like that. And I told her, disregard it. Obviously, I'm not going to recommend that place anymore. And she obviously has found other places that will embrace her. But it was just kind of shocking to me.
But as an owner, let's say that happened at our clinic, right? I would hope that in the exit interview that she would bring that to light so that if it was something we weren't aware of as an owner, that it's something we can handle immediately.
So I see what you're saying. That students are so scared.
I get it.
That something they're going to say is going to cause them to have an issue at school or an issue overall in the industry. And it's really sad that they can't speak truth freely about their experiences because of it. And they have school tell them, you can't talk about things, which I think is kind of hard and really shouldn't be dictated.
So I still don't understand the externship deal. This is kind of weird to me. So let's use a university. They require their students to have so many externships.
Yes.
How are they regulated? Like, does a school know every externship in the country and says this qualifies, this doesn't qualify? I'm confused by this whole thing.
So it depends on the school. Most of them, yes, you have to apply to be like the coordinator for your hospital or your clinic. And so you're the point person. And so, you're the person that is going to be grading them. You're the person that is going to be their point of contact.
But does the university say, okay, you want to be an externship hospital, we approve that because we know you're going to do the following?
No. So I do think some of the schools have, for it to be like their classes outside of school because they don't have teaching hospitals, yes, they have a standard. Like you're going to go learn about dermatology at a dermatology specialist hospital. They have to have a boarded dermatologist. Like there are certain standards, right? But for them to go out and like GP practices, no. I mean, it's pretty much someone just saying, yes, you can go there. There's really no
So if
standard.
I'm a university, I would want these students to tell me very transparently how the opportunity went.
Yes,
I
would agree.
That way you can steer clear of that clinic with the rest of your students if it turns out to be a toxic environment.
I think that there would be a whole nother episode to go if we really got into all the politics, toxicity, and issues that vet students have to deal with, both in university and out of the university. But when it comes to externships, I think definitely word of mouth and networking about people's real experiences, even if it's never put on paper, even if no one is ever going to be vocal about it on social media, I think it's really worth asking the questions of other people around you, because there's wonderful experiences out there where you're going to get support and you're going to get hands-on. And then there's experiences that really can defeat you and make you not even want to be a part of the industry.
How many externships do you do? I feel like there was several.
So I actually had like 6 that I did, but 2 of them were technically vacation blocks. So I didn't get grades for them, but I used them still to do externships to go and see practices because I wanted to do an internship. And when I was coming out, if you didn't visit the hospital and like get to know them in person, you wouldn't be considered for an internship. You couldn't just apply. So I had to make an effort to go to all those places to really try them out and then.
But you did do an externship at the place you ended up doing an internship at.
No. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But that is very true. I ended up going somewhere and it was a total fluke thing. I was the very first set of interns at their hospital. So very unique situation. But yes, we will get into that story in the future. But hopefully that answers Caitlin's questions about when to start looking for externships / internships. Immediately. Network the heck out of it. Really get in there, experience as much as you can, meet as many people as you can.
Ask a lot of questions of your other upperclassmen, et cetera.
Yep. Be engaged. And then practices, provide housing, have a good culture, and actually follow through with what you say the experience is going to be. And I think you might find some wonderful future veterinarians that might come work for you.
And over communicate with the practice. I think you've had some times where maybe the communication wasn't quite there and you weren't sure if people were coming or not coming, et cetera.
Yeah, we all are very busy, but the more you can reach out and just verify things, the better. So I'm excited because around the corner is our renovation. We are getting plans approved by the city. And then once we have more room, I plan on having as many externs as possible coming up in the next school year. So you guys reach out if you're interested in an externship in 2024/2025.
26 to 27.
I swear if it takes that long, we might be having a whole nother discussion. But I feel like this was a lot of information and hopefully it's helpful to somebody. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any other questions for us about anything vet med related or about owning a practice or emergency medicine, we are here to help you out. You can go to @QuestionsWithCrocker if you want to know more. You can go find us on @QuestionsWithCrocker and you can submit questions yourself, or you can also rate us on any of the Apple or Spotify podcast apps that you listen to. We'd love to hear your feedback. We love your questions. We enjoy talking about our experiences and hearing yours, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for listening.